Back again.
Welcome back.
Music Unapologetically.
So glad to have you with us.
Yeah. I'm your host, Adam.
I'm Travis.
Co-host.
Love being here.
Yeah, we do. Man.
I'm like your co-pilot.
Yeah.
Flying through the music of our lives.
Yeah. I like the way you just did that, man. And I like that you didn't wear a hat. You got your hair going. I didn't put my hair up for that reason.
Freshly washed.
Oh, yeah. Mine is not freshly washed, but I did wash it this morning.
That day 3 hair.
Yeah.
When you get, our long-haired folks.
Yo.
That day 3 when the natural oils.
Yeah. When the natural oils are kicking it. Man, I got to change this up.
Should have worn it up.
Anyways, welcome back. Let's go ahead and, is that on? I feel like it's on. Yeah, that sure is on. Let's turn that baby off. Oh, that's much better.
I can hear you.
Oh, I can hear you without an echo now. All right, so,
You want to hear 2 of me?
I mean, I don't want to hear 2 of me. 2 of you is fine. 2 of me is not fine.
Our listeners, would be 4 of both of us, and that's... We're
Yeah.
trying to get them to subscribe and like.
Right. Oh, yeah. Do that. Like, subscribe, and share. Yeah. Good job. Let's just get a playlist going. This playlist has literally nothing to do with what we're going to talk about tonight. So it's just a chill.
Just brings you into.
Yeah. Just a chill, lo-fi type, relaxing
I'm glad
music.
you brought up lo-fi.
Okay.
I have been on a lo-fi kick for a few months now.
Yeah.
Came across a lo-fi hip-hop when we were going through our Just Like This.
Right.
And I feel like I'm going to sound old here, but like my girlfriend and I like to play like cards.
Okay.
I work so much, so does she. So like at night, sometimes we just have dinner, sit down, play rummy or gin, whatever. And so we like to play some music, and we found this lo-fi hip-hop, and I was like, why does that song sound so familiar? It was lo-fi versions of 90s hip-hop.
Oh, nice.
And I've been on this lo-fi kick.
Yeah.
And there's, shout out to the YouTube channel Lo-Fi Fruit. Lo-Fi Fruit. They have 2-hour-long, straight-through sets.
Yeah.
With no commercial break that plays like current stuff. They have a hip-hop station. I mean, and it's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. It's on YouTube. We have nothing to do with these folks, but I played 2 hours worth of lo-fi stuff in the office the other day, and I had every patient was like, I know that song. What song? Dude, they're great. Lo-fi Fruit.
Lo-fi Fruit. I wonder if this is this music is going through right now. I guess we'll find out.
I hope for our listeners' sake it is, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it is good stuff. Anyways, like I said, this music has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You text me the other day talking about, hey man, let's talk about generational music. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting into the 2020s. Let me just preface this show.
Music at that point.
Exactly. That's exactly kind of where I was going. Let me preface this whole show, and this is my opinion. It's not necessarily your opinion. I grew up in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Music died in the early 2000s.
Agreed.
Like dead.
And we talked about my thoughts on Nelly.
Right.
Early
2000s.
Killed
hip-hop.
Dixie Chicks, now the Chicks.
Yeah.
Killed country.
I mean country was never alive for me.
That's fair enough.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, I agree. The 90s was the last solid decade of really good, across like all genres.
Right.
That idea, I was listening to, I sent you the video of Michael McDonald and the Doobie Brothers singing What a Fool Believes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, like we had the nostalgia episode.
Right.
And I'm thinking about my dad. I text my dad the same video. And as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what a good era of music.
Right.
And then I'm like, what about there's every decade.
Every decade has some good stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, music's not necessarily dead, but it's on life support. And the only reason it is on life support is because you have the bands and the groups and the hip hop artists or whatever that we grew up with. The old heads, as these new cats would call them, the old heads still making music and kind of and it's not the great stuff that they came up with in the 90s and early 2000s and 80s or whatever, you know what I mean? Like Method Man.
Yeah.
He's still coming out with stuff, and it's still fire, but it's not Wu-Tang Method Man type stuff, but it's keeping that music just with a faint heartbeat.
Well, the other thing too is a lot of the the collabs, which I find a lot of funny in it. You know, a lot of humor, like when Ozzy and Post Malone did their little thing, and people are like, "Oh, that's so kind of Post to put Ozzy on the map like that."
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you also see a lot of the sampling.
Right.
Like sampling's, there's more samples nowadays than I think anybody realizes.
Right.
I mean, there are entire social media channels that all they do is like show songs that are good that are samples from however long ago.
It's wild to me because I started watching that. I started watching it again. That hip hop revolution that we've spoke on a couple times. Yeah. And there's that one episode about all the producers who are in the bottom of that hotel room going through flipping through albums and you know not even knowing what they're picking up, but they're and that's me. You know, they obviously know what it is because they're picking it. You know, and now they're going to sample it. So, like, but when I say the old music that we grew up with and that we enjoyed and all this other stuff, the classic stuff, you know, and those artists are still making music today. John Mayer put one out yesterday.
You sent me.
Oh, love it. Yeah, I love it. The 80s vibe
it's real.
And so now there's an album coming out, I think, later this month.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be like a whole 80s like super vibe.
I love there's a couple of mainstream guys, and then there's a couple there's another group that I love that's like all about this 80s vibe. So you got like The Weeknd, his last album was, and all his last 2 or 3 singles all had that like real 80s-esque. You got this John Mayer one. There's a group called The Midnight that does that electronic 80s style, like, you know, with the synthesizer and like the guitar. Very like Phil Collins-esque, but they're all new stuff. Yeah, and their songs are amazing. And it's all instrumental stuff,
right?
But it's just straight 80s all day long.
My algorithms were going nuts yesterday after I sent you that John Mayer song. I tagged one of my buddies on it, and because he's a big John Mayer fan, and so my algorithms were going nuts, and it just kept on Facebook kept popping up. John Mayer groups. So I joined a couple.
Okay.
Man, the hate and the disdain of John Mayer fans that he is any way involved with Grateful Dead.
They're not fans.
Oh, they hate it.
Why?
I have no idea because number one, they're absolutely ignorant. They have no idea. They just have no idea how much of a music genius lyrically Jerry Garcia was. Then these old dudes could play. Okay, and so it got me looking into Grateful Dead. You know, they hold the record in the world all time sold out shows.
I didn't know that.
Fact.
Deadheads
are loyal because I'm reading these comments when somebody gets on and they're talking trash about John Mayer going on tour with the Grateful Dead. You start reading about the Deadheads, like, yeah, Dead and Company's touring this year, and I've already bought tickets to 22 of the shows, and I'm like, dude.
My cousin, give or take homeless, but kind of willingly, in a sense.
Right.
Works odd jobs, but he's literally a roadie. He
lives in a van.
He travels to follow Grateful Dead.
Right.
He work an odd job for a couple weeks, save some money.
I don't know if I'm about that life.
I mean, you get in the philosophy of life, man. Like, that's important. For him, good music and seeing the world. Whatever. More power to you.
Yeah.
Speaking of Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Let's start in a decade that most people are going to have at least some familiarity with, right?
Some familiarity.
The 60s. The 50s were great, don't get me wrong.
Okay, the 60s is a good spot to start in because 50s music, I don't really know a whole lot, before the 60s. Okay?
All that's really back there, like your Johnny B. Good.
Right.
A lot of like your...
The sock hop stuff.
A lot of your Motown stuff.
Okay.
Your Supremes, Gladys, like all, which is fun. But like you got to think like what the Beatles did for all music and how they like made music this international by bridging, across the pond.
Okay.
And from the 60s, it's like that's kind of that big kickoff.
Okay, so let's do this before we'll definitely start with the 60s, but list your generations in order of your favorite to start with your least favorite to your favorite.
So if we say 60s to 2000,
yeah, let's say 2010, just because I do enjoy Outkast and everything that was just after 2000.
So from 60s to 2010s, 2010s definitely last. 60s would be next. 2000s, 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. 90s being the best.
Wait, you like the 80s over the 70s? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Okay.
Only because, surprisingly, a lot of music that people think is 70s music is actually early 80s music.
Right. Okay.
See a lot of your late 70s crossover bands like
the Pink Floyds merge into there, Led Zeppelin.
Rush,
Yeah.
Journey,
okay. Yeah. Got you.
They all make that leap into the 80s.
No. Yeah.
And a lot of
yeah.
their bigger stuff.
And I want to talk about that later too. Mine would go early 2000s, 60s.
This is least to
most favorite.
Yeah.
So early 2000s, 60s, 80s, and then just put 70s and 90s interchangeable.
What about 2010s? We didn't do 2010s.
I'm not 2010s. I'm not a fan. Listen, the music that I listened to after 2010 and up until now is like folk music that nobody's ever heard about.
Yeah.
So it's your local natives, Young the Giant.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever heard of them.
Yeah.
Unless you're just really into the music. But yeah, you can take the 70s and the 90s and interchange them. I don't even care. It's 1A and 1B.
70s.
Yeah. Absolutely. My brother had a podcast. They don't do it anymore since he got back into school and moved over to Memphis. But they did a music episode, and one of his co-hosts said that the 90s was the worst generation for music that he's ever heard. He said the music in the 90s was trash, and that hurt. That hit me to my soul.
This guy's co-hosting a music podcast?
Well, no, it wasn't necessarily. They just did a music episode.
Oh, okay.
But
you should stop talking.
That's what I said, because then he started talking about like how great like Blink 182 is, and like all the like weird, like the Killers. I got to go back and listen to it and get the exact bands, but I'm like, yo, I texted my brother and I was like, how can this dude talk about the 90s as trash, but then list the bands he listed? And my brother goes, dude, I know. So.
It just meant, when you grow up with music being such a foundation of your life, you forget that a lot of times others don't. It's not a norm for everybody.
Right.
So you're like, your opinion and your understanding of music is so much different than other people that you just have to, bless.
And the crazy thing was, he is a 90s baby.
Is he?
Which is wild to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, 60s. When I think 60s, my head automatically goes to a place of hippies.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Grateful Dead is one of them. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. That's the music I go to. That, just that Free Love, Flower Power, Dodge drafting music.
Yeah, and see the thing about that though is you got
Carlos Santana.
Yes, and you got to be. This is what we talked about a second ago about the decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of those hippie artists, it's like French painters. Like
Right.
we hear about them now, we know about them now, but back then they were nobodies, right? So what was the kickoff point?
Woodstock.
1969.
Okay.
Into 1970.
So now we're getting into right.
So like when I think of 60s, yes, like for sure, tail end of the Vietnam era, but I'm also thinking like early Stevie. I'm thinking like the Supremes.
Okay.
Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Right.
I'm thinking that kind of like that early kind of Motown Philly,
that's just
kind of feel.
And that's just music, and maybe that's just my ignorance, but that's just music I never got into. You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
Like if I sat down and put on like the Temptations or Gladys Knight or Aretha Franklin, like,
Yeah.
I can't listen to it past 1 or 2 songs, man. I'm like, okay, I got to get out
See,
of
I
it.
got a Motown Philly station.
Yeah.
Like all Motown stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but then you also like your Beach Boys,
Okay.
your Monkees, your Beatles, Good Vibrations.
I'd rather forget about the Beatles. The Beatles are trash. You know what I mean?
Some of their music I'd have to disagree on. But here's the thing. You're talking again about a group that crossed generation, decade after decade after decade. I heard a really weird conspiracy theory the other day about the Beatles. Supposedly, Sir Paul McCartney died like the first year the band got big.
Okay. And they
And it
replaced
was a
him.
secret.
Uh-huh.
And they had this replacement guy that came in and filled
Right.
his spot. And the later, like weird, like hippie, like weird psychedelic stuff, like the album cover for Sgt. Pepper, had all these celebrities, Gandhi and all these big celebrities around the world. And what it was supposed to be was because he died and they had to keep it a secret, that they had to do this secret funeral where like the band and like the family member, the manager, that was it, was allowed to be there to keep it under wraps, and that the album cover was an homage to the funeral that he should have gotten, where
Right.
everybody was there.
Right.
And so they've taken it as far as if you look at other albums, like there's one of the album covers, they're sitting there with dead baby, like holding baby dolls with their heads torn off,
Right.
next to him, and they went as far as to have like a forensics expert look at the facial structure of like the original McCartney when they were like the Ed Sullivan Show, and the
Right.
guy that is the Paul McCartney now, and the dude's like, this is not even the same face.
Right.
All the facial structures are off.
But why
Measured.
I don't understand why you would even do that.
Popularity at the time, man.
I guess.
They were huge.
I guess.
But
Yeah.
songs like Sweet Caroline is also in the 60s.
Right. Elvis was in the 60s.
Yep.
I've said
Ray
it once.
Charles.
I've said it once. I'll say it a million times. And this will be for another episode of Unpopular Opinions.
Mm-hmm.
If Buddy Holly didn't die in that plane crash,
Yeah.
we wouldn't even be talking about Elvis Presley being the king of rock and roll.
True story. True story. I agree with that.
Cool.
I totally agree with that. Another thing that was a crossover, kind of talking the decade jump, 50s to 60s, but was still really big, Rat Pack era.
Okay.
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Dean Martin. Sammy Davis Jr.
Right.
Those guys, all 60s. Like most of their big stuff was in the 60s.
Yeah.
Ain't that a kick in the head?
Man, I would have loved to sit in a group in Vegas and listen to Frank Sinatra sing.
Dude.
Just knowing how involved with the mob he was, and listening to him sing the type of songs that
He was it's if you go back and watch just candid videos of Frank, like just sitting around like talking, he's sitting there smoking a cigarette. Just like kind of we talked about how baseball, we
Just
talked
so
about
cool.
Just so chill,
Yeah.
all the things that you don't do as a singer, kind of like in the early baseball era, like they're in there smoking cigars and drinking
Right.
whiskey. Like Frank's in there
dropping acid.
yeah,
Throwing no hitters.
Exactly. Frank's in there smoking cigarettes, chopping it up with the girls, and he's and then he's like, hold on one second. Ain't that a kick in the head?
Yeah.
Like, fly me to the moon.
Yeah.
You don't hear that kind of stuff anymore.
You got that sound, dude. That sounded pretty good.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
I will say, we won't go down the rabbit hole in this, but that sound, I know they talk a lot about like the low fidelity versus high fidelity, the records versus like the digital music and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like, I'm so impressed with Michael Bublé being able to sing that style.
Michael Bubble.
Michael Bubble.
Yeah.
But just to hear him sing that style on like, digital music
Yeah.
and it still sound like the Rat Pack era, like it makes you think like if Frank were alive now,
He'd be proud.
how much better he would sound.
Oh yeah. Yeah. True story.
Tony Bennett.
Speaking of Woodstock,
Yeah.
that if I could go back and do events in history, like if I could have a time machine, like okay, cool, you got five places in history that you can go. Woodstock would definitely be one of them.
Oh, for sure. To watch Santana. You know the story behind Santana?
Okay, so I don't recall, but I remember I watched a Woodstock documentary on either Hulu or it was the story of Woodstock, and
Yeah.
and how they plan, planning it, leading up to it actually happening, them running out of food, all this other stuff. And they did a big thing on Santana.
Santana was so high on acid, he had no idea where he was.
Yeah, and
His whole set, he said, I had no idea where I was.
And the wild thing is it wasn't until later in my life that I knew Santana was that old to have performed at Woodstock
as a young man,
right?
Not a child,
right? And now today he's still kicking it.
The greatest thing that happened at Woodstock, by far, Jimi Hendrix national anthem.
Oh yeah, he laced his headband with LSD, and it's crazy to me how people get mad at that version of it. I think it's one of the best ever.
If you're gonna get mad at the national anthem, you get mad at Fergie's
dude.
At the playoffs.
You get mad at Fergie's original.
Or the All-Star game, whatever the heck it was.
Yeah, it was at the finals.
Ugh.
You definitely got to be mad at Fergie, but
the fact that Draymond Green was standing there could not keep a straight face.
All of them were laughing. But then the Golden State Warriors remixed it, and that was pretty funny.
Did they really?
Oh, dude, it was crazy.
So 60s. How about we get into the golden era of rock and roll. 70s. Classic
No,
rock.
not 70s yet.
You want to skip it?
Yeah, I want to do our favorites at the end.
Okay. 2000s.
So the early 2000s is when I really started getting into hip hop, and it was Outkast.
Okay.
Outkast, that's who I think of early 2000s. I'm fresh out of high school, right? Going into college. And that's what I'm listening to is a lot of Outkast, a lot of Houston rap, the Swisher House and the Chopped and Screwed.
In the hallways of school. Who?
Yeah.
Mike Jones.
Right. I had a roommate in college who he got so excited. His grandma bought him a computer, brand new computer. And the first thing he did was downloaded LimeWire and downloaded the full 34-minute June 27th freestyle.
Okay.
He said, I got the whole version, and would play it all the time.
Yeah.
But that's when I learned about the Chopped and Screwed, the swinging and banging. What is it? 25 Lighters, which, and then, that's such an iconic rap song. ZZ Top came back and did a version of it, which is wild to me.
When I think of early 2000s, I think about the end of the 90s because it was all the verses. Christina versus Britney.
Right.
NSYNC versus Backstreet Boys, Soul For Real versus Boyz II Men, whatever. So it was after that you started to get that new millennium which I know people think I'm crazy. I liked boy groups.
Right.
I loved the Backstreet Boys.
98 Degrees and NSYNC.
Yeah, man. So I think about early 2000s. Yeah, downloading the LimeWire, the FrostWire, Napster.
Yeah.
Early 2000s for me, definitely same thing. Outkast.
Yeah.
Getting into that was the evolution for me for hip hop because I'd listened to hip hop in the late 90s with my older brother, but it was finding that love for it was early 2000s. That's when I learned about Nas.
Exactly. Outkast led me to Nas, to Biggie, to Tupac, and that's what led me to Mobb Deep. When he called out Mobb Deep on Hit 'Em Up, started listening to them, and then all of a sudden now I'm listening to Jay-Z, who I hate, Lil Wayne, who I hate.
Lil Wayne had an era that he was good.
Okay.
Styrofoam Cup Lil Wayne was the best.
Anyways.
The other thing, I'll tell you, the other big, at least for me, because I know you and I definitely don't see eye to eye on this, and you make fun of me for it, EDM.
Yeah.
The early 2000s when the EDM giant was awoken.
I did like that Sandstorm. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one. We don't need to play it.
We used to do it's funny at the cheer camps. We'd put words to it in a little dance. The kids did, I should say. It went big fish, little fish, cardboard box, looking through the window, shopping, or looking through the window, or looking through the closet, shopping bag, shopping. The kids just come up with all these lyrics for it, and we play the song, and they would they'd freestyle stupid lyrics to that song.
That sounds horrible.
It was hilarious.
Oh, okay.
They would come up with the most ridiculous stuff.
I guess you had to be there, but
Yeah, definitely.
Early 2000s too. I'm still taking I'm taking Smashing Pumpkins from the 90s into the 2000s. I love them.
Okay.
I'm still listening to the Toadies and Candlebox and all that stuff from the 90s over into the 2000s. But then it was later from I guess the 2004, 2005, I started getting into the Modest Mouse.
Okay.
And the Death Cab. I don't know when, but these weird bands like Boy and Bear.
Slipknot was big for me.
Slipknot was big in the 90s when I was in high school for me. Korn and Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
We'll get to that one.
Early 2000s for me was Korn.
Right.
And then Godsmack, early 2000s.
Godsmack, yeah. Generational music is it
kind of ties into that nostalgic we talked about.
Right.
Because here you and I are talking about because being 90s, like growing up 90s, 2000s, we know the music that was on the radio.
Yeah.
Versus what our parents played on the oldie station.
Right.
So we get to it's that. What was I doing in 2004? Senior in high school. Okay. What was I doing senior in high school? I was driving this truck. What was I doing in this truck? Listening to this music.
Right.
It's just right there.
I can tell you, yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah, in the 90s I'll do that. You can always pinpoint at least one group who transitions you from one generation into another. Mm-hmm. Okay? I told you I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah.
So Pink Floyd is from 70s to 80s for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the 80s to the 90s is Metallica.
Yeah.
Okay, so I took Metallica, hard rock, slasher, hard guitar riffs, long hair, whatever. And then once they get into the 90s, cut their hair. Now we're alternative, and I know that they're not the ones who started alternative music,
Right?
But that's for me.
Right.
That was the transition. And then again in the 90s to the 2000s, it's Smashing Pumpkins. Took me into the 2000s. You know what I mean?
And for me, and that's that. I think that just shows it. Even though you and I are only a couple years apart in age, Metallica is when I think Metallica, it's only 90s.
Uh-huh.
I just think Enter Sandman, that whole feel.
Right.
I mean, I like the other stuff. I listen to it, but my first thought when I think of Metallica is Enter Sandman, because I remember mid-90s being at the Boys and Girls Club, and they would have MTV on the TV, and I remember Enter Sandman was in the top 10 TRL, right? And
right.
Everybody loved that song, and so it's that's late 90s for me, mid to late 90s.
Yeah. I like that. Metallica's great.
I still love them.
Okay, so I started, when I first found out about Metallica, I loved them, and then I guess when they went to alternative, I stopped liking them.
Really?
And I would laugh.
Sold out?
Yeah, that's what I feel like. I feel like I don't know, somebody at a label was like, hey, this is the direction we need to go now, and instead of sticking to their guns and no, this is the kind of music that made us with these hard riffs and long hair and heavy metal, they went on with the King Nothings and the King for a Day or whatever.
What bothered me most, and it's not even Metallica, it was not Metallica at all. The four original heavy metal bands: Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica, and who's fourth? Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax. So Metallica's final touring year was the year before COVID. Mm-hmm. They had a show in Dallas. There's resale tickets were $3,000.
Oh no!
Because it's their final year, right? The idea to pitch a Big Four tour, all the guys from Metallica were completely on board. Lars Ulrich was like, yeah, we'd love to do that. If everybody else is down, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was Megadeth.
Yeah.
That was we have no interest in that. They were the only one. Every other band was yeah. I mean, could you imagine going to a show and seeing Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, and Metallica in the same night?
So I feel like you can have the three without Megadeth, because I've read it where it was said one time, Metallica can definitely Megadeth.
Yeah.
No way Megadeth can Metallica.
But
at all. But I mean, Mustaine was in Metallica for a hot minute
Right.
and then went and
But here, think about this. Outside of that, could you really enjoy the music knowing that, like, you had all of, like, this generational stuff and knowing that they're not going to play everything that you want to hear because you know you've got to fit 4 bands. And so you're going in there, like, wondering when they cherry pick all of their stuff, am I going to leave here satisfied?
yeah.
Regardless of what you think about each one band. Because you get hype about all of them. But you're going in there like, I want to hear this, I want to hear this, I want to hear this.
Yeah.
Knowing that they're going to cherry pick what they want to play, and you may get 6 songs each, 8 songs each, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you leave there thinking like,
That's fair.
that wasn't what I hoped for.
Man. That's what I hate.
Because of the generational gaps. They got to pick something, right?
That's what I hate about concerts for sure, is going to a concert and wanting to hear a specific song being played.
and you wait.
And you wait.
And you wait.
And you wait.
And then you wait for the encore.
And you wait. And you wait. And they don't play it. And then you're like, man, wasted my money.
That almost happened to me when I saw Elton John. We got the parking at the parking at the Freeman was not like, they had the worst staff. We sat in front of the Freeman on the road for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Watching, like, it's showtime, right? And I'm like, if I don't hear Benny and the Jets,
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
Right.
And the show's about to start, and I don't know his set list, I don't know any of that stuff. And I was like, I told my buddies, they're sitting in the car, I was like, I'm not driving, y'all park the car, I'm going, I'm not missing this show. And I took off running through the parking lot, got my ticket scanned, ran in. As I'm running in, he's playing his very first song, and he's about a third of the way through it. It's Benny and the Jets. And I ran into, like, the wing, and I'm standing in the wing listening to him sing it. And the ticket lady's like, where's your ticket? And I was like, it's right here. She goes, this is not your section. I was like, I know. I was like, I got to hear this song. This is like, no matter what, I got to hear this song. She's like, if you have to go to your seat. I'm like, ma'am, I'm not leaving until he's done with this song. She's like, I'll call security if you don't go to your seat. I'm like, call them. By the time they get here, the song will be over and I'll be gone. Go ahead. And I stood there in the wing because I almost missed that song. And she's like calling for security. The song ends. I go, okay, bye. And I took off completely took off running to the other side.
That's funny.
And every other song after that, I'm like, was great, but I would have missed Benny and the Jets if I'd have waited.
Yeah, but going into a concert like that now, like I can't do it anymore. Like expecting to hear a song, I just want to hear them jam now, because if I'm sitting there mad because the next song is not what I want to hear, and then the next song is not what I want to hear, then the next song, I'm losing focus on how great the concert probably actually is.
True story.
Because I'm waiting for this stupid song to be played, and it's making me mad that it's not being played, so I'm not enjoying the actual genius of the musician who I paid money to see.
True story.
You know? So there's that.
So what decade do you want to do next?
80s.
Good one.
So the 80s, it took... Okay, so I used to say the 80s was horrible music. I couldn't stand listening to it. But it was because I was uneducated on it. I knew there was some Pink Floyd and some Doobie Brothers and some of those 70s bands that we talked about that transitioned into the 80s. You know, it should be said that bands don't just quit. Hey, I started in the 70s. I got to quit because it's the 80s now. And, you know, the generation of music and the music is evolving, and the evolution of music is so, you know, noticeable. We have to stop.
Right.
You know, so you got these bands that are going in. But now, it was a couple years ago at work, we took the kids to see Bumblebee. Okay, the Transformers.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so that movie is the beginning of the Transformers, when they send Bumblebee from the planet or whatever to Earth to hide.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the start of the
I
Transformers.
haven't even seen that preview
Okay,
for this thing.
and it's a couple of years old now, so I'm not worried about ruining it for anybody. But the music, the soundtrack to it was 80s, and so Tears for Fears, comes on, and I'm like, man, that's a really good song. I really do enjoy that song, and I've heard it, but I had heard it before, but I've never really like heard it.
So we talked a lot about the bands that transition.
Right.
I mean, think about the bands that peak in a later decade.
Right.
Chicago.
Yeah.
You're the inspiration.
Right.
But some of Chicago's best was, I mean, yeah, they're 70s band all day, but like some of their best stuff is
Yeah, right. One of Pink Floyd's best albums is in the 80s, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. A great album. It's in the 80s. It's still Pink Floyd. You can tell it's still Pink Floyd, but it's 80s Pink Floyd. It's not your since the music has evolved. So I feel like Pink Floyd in the 70s was ahead of their time with their style, with the synthesizer and the way they played that. And now music caught up to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So once they're in the 80s now, everyone's doing it now. And so now you can tell it's Pink Floyd, but now they just sound like your run-of-the-mill 80s band.
Right.
Instead of ahead of their time in the 70s.
Queen was the same way. Queen was great in the 70s.
Right.
But Under Pressure,
Right.
David Bowie.
Yeah.
Fat Bottom Girls.
Right.
Was also 70s.
Man, that's a great
or
song.
80s.
It's a great song.
And my favorite band.
Toto.
No, I love Toto though.
Yeah, I do
Journey.
too. Oh, okay.
Journey.
Oh, you've said that before. Okay. But yeah, when I think of 80s music now, and it's because of this movie that we went to take the kids to see, I'm thinking of Tears for Fears, Toto, stuff like that. You've got your hair bands. What was Mr. Big? What was the other one? The other
Twisted Sister.
Yeah, them.
Motley Crue.
Man, I'll get back to that. I'm thinking of one specific band in the 80s.
Poison?
No, they suck.
Whoa.
Okay, we'll get back to that.
Hairband?
Yeah, it's a hair band. They got one of the most iconic 80s songs ever.
Kiss?
No, not Kiss.
They have Kisses in the 80s is best. I mean, a lot of their stuff was late 70s, but they were definitely 80s.
Okay, look, I'm gonna
hair bands in the 70s. Let's see if I 80s. Let me see if I can think. So not Motley Crue, not Poison,
not Motley Crue,
not Rush.
No.
Trying to think of it. I'm trying to think of like those, like the arena rock. Def Leppard.
No, not Def Leppard. Oh man, what is this?
Van Halen.
No. Man, this is gonna bug me.
While you're looking that up, one thing that I loved about the '80s music was the evolution of hip hop. Because like when we get to '70s, we talk about Rapper's Delight, but you got into like Funky Cold Medina in the '80s.
Whitesnake.
Yeah.
Whitesnake.
Whitesnake is what music that our parents made love to. In the back of a Camaro.
That's disgusting.
It's the truth, though. You know, tell you who else was my favorite decade for them? And you're talking about multi-decade. We're talking 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. My favorite decade was the 80s for this person. I just gave it away.
Was it Elton John?
I
don't know. Gross.
Oh, come on, man.
Gross, man.
Rock With You was an amazing... Like, 80s was Michael's decade.
Yeah.
90s, he got into, like, the bad, you know, but, like, the 80s, he was still kind of like Pretty Boy.
He wasn't white yet.
Exactly.
You know who else I love from from the 80s? And I feel like he's super duper underrated?
Who?
Billy Joel.
Oh, definitely.
Super underrated.
So underrated.
Anybody, with the exception of Elton John, who sits at a piano to play rock music, you're underrated.
For sure.
Billy Joel, I mean, he got the love that he deserved, but I feel like when you're talking about kids going back to listen to the classics, going to listen to the old stuff, they're not searching out Billy Joel, which is a shame. Piano Man is one of my favorite songs in the world.
For our listeners that are listening to us going, I'm still not convinced about the 80s. Keep in mind, when you go to a wedding, the majority of what you're hearing is from the 80s.
It's from the
So if you enjoy having a good time, the 80s are where you need to be. Man in the Mirror.
Yeah.
Don't Stop Believing. Planet Rock. Money for Nothing.
But yeah, Dire Straits.
Money for Nothing. Come on.
Right on. That
What put MTV
on the
map?
Video killed the radio star.
The radio star and Money for Nothing.
Right. Money for Nothing for the longest time was the number one. I guess they did a ranking of music videos. Yeah. And for the longest time, Money for Nothing was number one.
I think it was the first music video that had animation in it.
Right. So it always went Money for Nothing and then Purple Rain.
That's
not Purple Rain, November Rain.
I was going to say Purple Rain was a great video.
No. November Rain was a great video. The wedding, and then the funeral, and then Slash in the rain playing his guitar.
Here's the thing, man. The best music video of all time, and I feel like you're gonna argue with me on it, but I feel like only because your gut reaction is gonna be to argue with me. But
Thriller.
Thriller's great. Destiny or Beyonce.
Yeah, get out of here. I'm not even entertaining that. No. Put a ring on it.
It's a great video.
Wow, man.
What decade now?
I wish you never had did that. You pick, man. 70s or 90s.
Well, you and I both are like those are like our two. That's two. That's literally the foundation of our podcast.
I used to tell my dad all the time, like I grew up in the wrong generation. Like I should have been born in the 60s, like early 60s, and actually like grew up and did my adolescence through the 70s.
For sure. Big body cars.
Yeah. Big body cars, classic rock music.
Girls.
Yeah.
You know it was 80s.
Bell bottoms.
So let's do 70s.
Okay.
And we'll
70s.
say 90s for last. Because you and I are both 90s junkies.
So
CCR.
Automatically I go to Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd.
See, I go to CCR, the Doobie Brother, Allman Brother.
Right.
And
now
it's Skynyrd.
Well, I do enjoy the Southern classic rock the most. Mm-hmm. Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd are a nostalgic thing. I remember the first time I heard Kashmir.
Yeah.
Okay. We were driving to church camp, and my dad was driving the van. And it came on the radio, and he turned it up. And we got a bunch of, young, and when I say young, I'm talking like second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders jamming out to Kashmir in the van on the way to church camp with my dad. Like, that tells you a lot about my dad. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude.
And so that was my introduction to Led Zeppelin. And so it wasn't long after that for Christmas, I got my first Led Zeppelin CD, In Through the Outdoor.
There you go.
But that's an 80s. That's an 80s album.
But your love started.
But my love started with 70s. And now, man, anytime Led Zeppelin is on the radio, I'm stopping. I got Led Zeppelin on the wall up above your right shoulder.
Yeah.
That's, I can't remember. I think that's Zoso, and it's got Stairway to Heaven on it.
Mm-hmm. So I was going through it, and I sent you, which we found out our can't do playlist. Yeah. But it's
such a shame.
I know, it's so dumb. I respect the artist and
yeah.
But so for our listeners, I sent Adam a few, a handful of songs from each decade that in the 70s. The 70s was the first one, and when I got into the decades, I was like, crap, there's so many songs I can think of. And the biggest thing about the 70s too is that generation or that decade was where, like, trying to expand the genres.
Right.
So I just want to read this list. And these are just a handful of songs of different genres from the 70s, just to give you guys an idea of how diverse music was in the 70s, which is why Adam and I are so just junkies for the 70s. So these are all 70 songs, believe it or not. Give Me 3 Steps, Bohemian Rhapsody, Rapper's Delight, Three Little Birds, Family Tradition, Tiny Dancer, and Fat Bottom Girls.
Three Little Birds.
Bob Marley. It was a 70s song. I forget that song was in the 70s.
Look who I had pulled up literally while you were reading that list. Can you see that?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I was not going to let us get out of the 70s without mentioning Bob Marley.
But I just love that, in these 7 songs, you've got Southern classic rock.
Right.
You've got Queen rock.
Right.
You've got hip hop. You've got reggae. You've got Southern, like not Southern, like family tradition, like just Southern.
Yeah.
Tiny Dancer. So you
Yeah.
got some pop.
Yeah.
And Fat Bottom Girl, you know, more the Queen.
Right.
Like in 7 songs and one out
Right.
of thousands,
You've
you
got-
cover
You've got at least six
different genres.
genres or subgenres. Yeah.
70s was like the explosion of like after the hippie movement and everybody like just we got past free love. You got think about it. We're past Vietnam. You got some of the rock from the 60s. You got disco coming.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just about to bring up. Disco's on its way. You know, we didn't even mention a disco. Mm-hmm. Not a disco fan myself.
You've also got your post-invasion decade.
Yeah.
So now you got all the groups that want to be, you know, groups.
Right.
You've got your post-Motown.
Right.
It's just like every one of those early seeds that were planted just sprouted.
70s,
all of these different types.
70s music is the reason when we did the movie music, the soundtracks, why Dazed and Confused is my favorite. Because it is, I mean, it's
quintessential.
It's Peter Frampton. It's, who's the crazy dude? He plays the guitar. He's crazy now. He's crazy right-wing nut.
Oh, Ted Nugent.
Ted Nugent, you know, just Black Oak, Arkansas. Not a fan. My dad loved him, but he was just super weird.
Yeah.
His voice. I feel like if he didn't sing in that weird voice, like one of the popular songs is Jim Dandy. If he didn't sing like he did, I'd probably like them.
Yeah.
But his voice is so annoying. Like his voice to me is like
Nails on chalkboard.
well, the way you describe Stevie Nicks on steroids.
Yeah, you can't get past it.
You can't. So I hate.
Ted Nugent.
No. I love Ted Nugent. I love his music. I love Stranglehold. I think that's one of the best solo guitar ever. But I'm talking about Black Oak, Arkansas. Yeah. But yeah. But 70s is where I belonged. Now the soundtrack I didn't mention what would that football movie.
Oh, Remember the Titans.
Yeah. What era?
60s.
That 60s. That was a great soundtrack.
There was. A lot of Temptations.
Right.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Right. But it's those mainstream songs. That's all I can listen to once I start delving a little deeper.
Well, that's, we also got, we're so spoiled with how easy it is for music to come out.
Yeah.
And the volume. I think that's another big
Yeah.
thing is the sheer volume of music now. Like when you go back and you look at like the 60s and 70s, the process it took to get music to the masses was so arduous that like you'd have a song that was #1 for 6 months because there was nobody. Like, we're trying to make the next album.
Right.
You and I can take what we do tonight and
Edit
put it into a plug-in and turn our entire hour conversation into a song and upload it in 5 minutes.
Right.
And that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down on just how that's watered down music. But I think it's because it took so much time that people like knew like, hey, this has got to be good because it's what people are going to listen to for the next however long.
Right.
You see the timelessness of it now.
Pending the amount of time that we had left once we got through all the eras, I was willing to go down that rabbit hole of how it literally takes no talent to make it in the music industry this day.
You can buy plugins that will automatically make, like, you could sing every note off key.
Auto-tune it.
And it will completely perfect.
Right. And that's hip-hop today. Auto-tune. Who's the T-Pain?
Sings so well without auto-tune.
Right.
It blows
It's
my mind.
crazy.
The fact that he ever used it.
Right. I feel like once he put a song out on auto-tune, like he had to go nothing but auto-tune. You know what I mean? Because if he came out without any kind of auto-tune, no one's going to know who he is.
Right.
But it's so recognizable with the auto-tune.
To see him do those small sets where he sings acoustic.
Right.
And that's early homework, so I don't forget it. If you've never heard T-Pain sing without auto-tune, just Google search.
Yeah.
I promise you will not be disappointed.
I don't think T-Pain could disappoint me anyway. But anyways.
To the 90s?
To the 90s.
Hallelujah. Sweet salvation.
So, I need to pull up your list here and just see.
So this was out of... So as you could tell, as I went on, the lists got longer.
Yeah, they did.
And the 90s was the longest.
Time of Your Life. Wait. Lauryn Hill?
No, Time of Your Life. Good Riddance.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I hope you have the time of your life. Just because, so when I think about the 90s, yes, there's a lot of great music that's good because it's good. The thing about the 90s also is there was a lot of like just the songs that everyone knows, that everyone recognizes that are still good.
Right.
You know, like the timeless of the 90s.
Right.
You know, we think timeless like you're thinking like your 70s, your 60s, some of your 80s stuff. And then you see less and less timeless music.
Yeah.
I feel like the 90s still had some of these timeless songs. Like Time of Your Life is going to be the graduation song forever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just like Another Brick in the Wall.
Exactly.
It's gonna be up there with that.
Motown Philly, only because
Yeah, why?
I liked Motown Philly because I felt like it was this really cool glimpse of crossover between like hip hop and R&B, because you hear that a lot, like tune into 98.5 The Beat, hip hop and R&B, and you hear hip hop,
right,
and you hear R&B. Well,
right.
Now you got Boys to Men who sing hip hop sing R&B doing a hip hop version. Like that to me was kind of cool because like you don't hear the two together.
That's fair.
So I thought that was kind of.
I'll give you that one.
Then you get into like the stuff you and I love the most: Iris, Wonderwall, Everlong.
Wonderwall. So there is your example of one of the greatest songs that wasn't even the best song on an album.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I don't think people appreciate Oasis the same way I don't think people appreciate Coldplay.
So we're going to do an episode on underrated music. And Oasis is definitely going to be on there because I think with the Gallaghers fighting and them breaking up so early and not being able to put out more Oasis CDs or albums or whatever, that makes them super underrated because What's the Story? Morning Glory is one of the greatest rock albums ever made.
You know what's funny?
And people don't even realize it.
A lot of that underrated music, I bet you if we asked each other, which decade do you feel like had the most underrated music? I feel like it's going to be the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s, absolutely. Yeah. Because you got bands like Candlebox, I think they're underrated. Being outdone by a Nickelback or a Three Doors Down or whatever. But Candlebox was awesome. I went to a concert one time and it was Bush, who I love. I love Bush, and they were opened up by a band called Default.
Okay.
Do you remember Default? Okay.
Maybe I heard some of their songs.
If you heard one, you probably would. But Default opened up, and Bush was definitely not the best band of the night.
I'm only a fan of Glycerin. I don't feel like I like Bush. I like their sound, and like some of their songs are good, but I feel like they rode the Glycerin.
I disagree. Wave. I think Gavin was very, very talented, but to the point where you've got super underrated music like Default opening up for Bush, and they were much better than Bush in my opinion, especially that night.
Fair enough.
My favorite subgenre, and we've talked about this before, is the grunge. I love Nirvana. I love Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Temple of the Dog,
Smashing Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins, I wouldn't necessarily call them grunge. They're definitely alternative, but I'm thinking of Foo Fighters, and then there's one other I'm missing, Alice in Chains.
Yep.
Now, when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to listen to Alice in Chains because it was Alice in Chains, and my mom did not like that. But, it was, no, Mom, the band is named after one of their friends named Allison Chains.
Right.
So...
Bought you a pass. Right.
So started listening to that. But I remember in the 90s, I'm in 8th grade, and I'm calling 99.5 KISS every night. Every night when it's, I think from like 8 to 10 was the all request line. Yeah. Hey, I need to listen. I need y'all to play Grind by Alice in Chains every single night before I went to bed. I was calling them and asking for it. So yeah, that's
90s for me was very Hootie and the Blowfish.
oh yeah,
Blues Traveler.
So you got your okay,
Hey, the Gin Blossoms.
Gin Blossoms, Counting Crows.
Definitely Counting Crows.
Dave Matthews. I wasn't necessarily a Dave Matthews fan in the 90s, but that's where they started. Blind Melon, Jars of Clay, Depeche Mode a little bit, but not. No, I take that back. But yeah, there's so many genres of music in the 90s that I love.
And only because we have done 3 episodes on it. The majority of your and my favorite hip hop artists
are in the 90s. Absolutely. Or they
and your vocalists, big vocalists, Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn Hill.
I know you don't like her, but Whitney's biggest hits were in the 90s.
Yawn.
Celine Dion was in the 90s.
Man, have you seen Cher lately?
Cher now, or what looks like Cher from 50 years ago that is still Cher now?
What? Cher looking like Kim Kardashian.
You know who else has had their face redone again and looks exceedingly young and attractive? Madonna.
Shit, we're talking about the same picture here.
Madonna has redone her face again and looks like she's 15.
Yeah.
Like she.
Well, that's gross.
Well, you know what I mean.
I don't want to crush on a 15-year-old, 60-year-old lady.
You know what I mean.
But yeah,
but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So on the list, I had Motown Philly, Time of Your Life, Iris,
Goo Goo Dolls. I've seen them live. They're trash.
Really?
But I like their studio stuff.
Fair enough. Matchbox 20 also.
Trash.
Wonderwall. Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
Oh yeah.
So that's one thing I looked back through. I actually had Elton
Lion
John
King.
like almost.
Is that Lion King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Everlong, No Rain, Basket Case, Good Riddance, which Time of Your Life. Hey Jealousy, Gin Blossoms.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones, Counting Crows. Anything. Yeah. I put anything Hootie and anything Blues Travelers.
Let me ask you this. Post Malone did the redo of Hootie and the Blowfish. Did you hear it?
No.
Okay, I'll play it for you after this episode,
okay.
And I want to know your opinion. I myself think it's great.
Well, you remember that set he did not too long ago where he played some country music? I think he played like Johnny Cash.
Listen, man.
And everybody's like, okay, I need a Post Malone country album now.
Listen, man. Post Malone not rapping, he's a genius.
Really?
When he starts rapping, I'm out. When he starts playing his guitar acoustic and actually singing, I'm super in. I'm super in.
I do. That's another episode.
Yeah.
Artist who changed genres.
Oh yeah.
Like Darius Rucker.
Aaron Lewis.
From Hootie to country.
Yeah. Aaron Lewis went from Stained to country.
The Eagles going from rock to country.
Yeah. No, that's a good episode. But man, 90s
so much good music.
90s music just that's my go-to.
Here's to your point, which one of your points you made in one of the very first episodes we said, and I absolutely love it, and I'll never forget it. Was one of the things you said about why you love music so much is that there's something
for everybody.
The 90s is a decade where there is something for everybody.
Literally something for even if the 90s is not the era that you grew up in, you will
something.
Absolutely. My dad did. My dad was just like me. He loved music, and he's finding all kinds of. He found Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Before I did.
Yeah.
And loved it. But yeah, there's something for everybody. Even if, like my mom, if you're into the talk radio and podcast, there's still music out there for you. She's a big old Journey fan. She loves disco. So it's weird, man. It's super weird. Music is just weird to me,
It's generational.
It's generational, and it's something that it's something I crave. Like when I'm at work, I'll get to working and I'll literally stop what I'm doing.
Got to put something on
to put my headphones in or to start my Spotify up on my laptop or whatever. So now I can work. And then I share an office with one of the bosses, and so I'll put my music on and I'll hear her singing it.
Yeah,
But another one we forgot is Weezer started in the 90s.
True.
Eminem started in the 90s.
Very true.
And transitioned into the 2000s. I don't know, man. It's wild.
Homework. What homework do you got for him?
I don't necessarily have any homework. I guess we can just go straight into what to listen to. I'll start.
Go for it.
Let me pull up some playlists and get some ideas. One band I definitely want everybody to go listen to is Young the Giant. It's one of my favorite bands. There.
Candlebox too.
No, you don't have to listen to Candlebox. The Candlebox is like it's an acquired taste, I feel like.
Fair enough.
But it's definitely one of those guys and bands that were a graduate of the Eddie Vedder School of Singing. You know, he kind of, them. There was another band. Man, we forgot about the Toadies. That's disrespectful. But anyways, Young the Giant. Definitely go check them out. I've got a band that I like that's called Death Cab for Cutie, and it's like
I know Death Cab.
And it's acoustic, folk rock, whatever, But if you go check out his side project, The Postal Service,
okay,
it's electronica, acoustic type stuff.
Really?
It's
now you're talking my language.
It's weird.
Now you're talking my language.
It's super weird. And John Mayer put out a new song yesterday.
Go find that. For sure.
It's called Last Train Home. Go check it out. So those are my 3. Go for it.
My 3 are going to be... I want people to go... So we talked about artists that cross generation. I want people to pick one artist, whether it be Elton John, Michael Jackson, Journey, CCR, who find an artist that has multi-generation music.
Yeah.
And find one song from each decade that you like.
That's a good one.
I think Elton would be the easiest for most people. You've got 70s, you got Tiny Dancer in the 70s, 80s. Who's Elton? An Elton 80s song. Rocket Man? Or is that 70s?
I couldn't tell you.
Either way, and then you got...
I'm bad with the years.
And then you got Can You Feel the Love Tonight in the 90s?
Yeah.
Right? So there are artists that... If you search multi-decade artist,
right,
Prince is one.
Yeah.
Right? Find an artist find an artist you like now and see if they extend back that far and try to recognize 3 songs from 3 different decades.
Counting Crows just put out an album.
There you go. 2020.
So, right. So, who's your 3?
I'm going to say 3 songs.
Yeah. No, 3 bands.
3 bands.
You can specify songs if you would like.
I would say easy one to do, Stevie Wonder. Definitely do Stevie Wonder. I know he's got 3 generations.
Okay.
Elton John, 3 generations. And I know you hate them, and I'm going to say it. The Beatles.
I know
so
trash,
I know,
man.
but the Beatles have 3 decades.
I can't stand them.
I know. But
Anyways.
that's more like listen to the differences.
Yeah.
Listen to the differences.
That's fair. The crazy thing is I liked Paul McCartney solo. Mm-hmm. Like when he was doing Band on the Run. Is that Paul McCartney?
I
think it is.
The only thing I know that he did with somebody after the Beatles was he did Ebony and Ivory with Stevie.
Yeah, he did.
I liked George Harrison. He had Got My Mind.
Yeah, Paul McCartney and Wings, Band on the Run.
Oh, it was Wings. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, that's our episode for the day. Generational music. Agree with us, disagree with us. We don't care. Just listen to us, subscribe, share, do all the things that lets us know that you're listening to us. And
even if you don't like our podcast, show us by hitting the like button so hard that you break your mouse.
Yeah. And then send us a message talking about how bad we are.
Comment that so that it dings the algorithm.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll catch y'all later.
See you guys.